community input matters, and we like to listen to it. The applicant, Middleburg Communities, in my experience, has done a good job of trying to listen to what the community has to say, their opinions and thoughts on things, and what we'll try to do is, understand. I think the purpose of tonight's meeting, we're relatively early in the process, is to try to understand, what the big concerns are, what the big questions are out there, and it'll give us an opportunity to try to work on those as we move throughout the process. So. We don't have, as I mentioned, a very strict agenda or game plan for tonight. We have a brief presentation. I'll do some introductions to the team, or of the team, rather. We'll do an overview of Gwinnett County's rezoning process. I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with that. And then we'll do an overview of the proposed development. And then from there, really just kind of open it up to questions and comments. We'll try to keep it to about an hour, 7:15. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. And I'll say at the front end, this doesn't need to be the last community meeting that we do about this project. So we can have this kind of be a informational kickoff first meeting, and we can continue the conversation as we move throughout the process. And that can be done, through group gatherings like this. Sometimes communities will pick a couple point people that we can communicate with directly, and they can disseminate information from there. But it also can be just one-on-one. If you prefer to just call me or my office or send me an email, we engage that way as well. We do try to make ourselves available to folks as we move throughout the process. So introductions. So my name is Shane Lanham. I'm an attorney with Mahaffey Pickens Tucker LLP. We have our office here in Gwinnett County, in the Lawrenceville, in between Lawrenceville and Duluth. I do primarily zoning and land use work, and am most active here in Gwinnett County. Here tonight with the applicant, Middleburg Communities, is Sean Roscoe and Ryan Miller. They are part of the applicant teams. They represent the developer who's proposing the rezoning of the subject property, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with. The subject property is approximately 29 acres. We're on the north side of Highway 78. We are currently zoned, split zoned M1 and C2. So M1 is a light industrial zoning classification. The bulk of the property is under that M1 light industrial zoning classification in a smaller acreage. I think it's just a handful of acres, 3 to 5, if memory serves. That's zone C2, which is a commercial zoning classification up along Highway 78. The property, hopefully y'all were able to see it driving in. As you came up the hill on the church driveway, you got to that crest and could look out at the subject property right there on your left. It is, almost completely developed. It's a big flat plateau, right, that you saw driving in. So it's graded, it's pretty flat already, and that rear portion of the property is what has that M1 light industrial zoning classification. So Gwinnett County has a pretty typical, for Metro Atlanta, 3-stage rezoning process. We are in the early stages of it, so we submitted our rezoning application after having a couple meetings with the county in late 2025. Late November or early December. And so that has kicked off phase 1 or stage 1 of the rezoning process, which is staff review. And so the Gwinnett County Planning and Development Department has 2 main divisions, the planning division and the development division. And they are set up that way to address the 2 main components of any development and construction project. And that's one, the first phase is the zoning and land use phase, right? And so essentially, the question that's being posed to the county here in this phase 1 stage is, what is an appropriate use of the property, right? So the county has all sorts of tools in place to evaluate that question. And then phase 2 is the development and permitting phase. So once the land use of the property is determined through its zoning classification, property owners and developers can go through the development and permitting process, which is, submitting LDPs, land disturbance permits and building permits and that sort of thing. That second phase of that overall construction process is more, engineering based. The county has its established development standards and criteria. It has its engineering requirements for things like stormwater management, for access configuration, setbacks, that sort of thing. And so once we go through the zoning phase, or once any property owner developer gets to that zoning phase, that second phase is where they get into those more sort of technical aspects. So we're in, that phase one period, which is the land use and zoning, and within that land use and zoning section, we're in the staff review and analysis phase. So we submitted the rezoning application to Gwinnett County. A quick note there, if you received the invitation in the mail to this meeting, you saw the letter of intent, the site plan, and maybe some other application materials. As I mentioned, we're happy if you want to reach out to us. We're happy to send you other application materials that were submitted, including the whole package that includes traffic study, the building elevations. We have some sampling of those building elevations that were submitted. But also, Gwinnett County has I think a pretty good online permit portal. So just for those of y'all that aren't familiar with that, the software, they call it the ZIP portal, the ZIP portal. So zoning inspections and permits. I think the software is Excella. And so what you can do is if you go, the easiest way is probably just to Google Gwinnett County Permits Portal, and that'll come up with a link to that Excella County ZIP portal. And if you type the application number, which was on that letter, that will pull up the landing page for this rezoning case, and it will have all of the application materials that we submitted. So it'll have, not just the small 8.5 by 11 version you may have received in the mail, but you'll have access to the full PDF electronic version of the site plan survey and traffic study and things like that. So that's something that people find useful, is to be able to pull up application materials and on their own and review them. And related to that is Gwinnett County has their GIS mapping system, which is pretty good among counties and other jurisdictions and municipalities in the metro Atlanta area. So that, again, if you're not familiar with that, that's just an online mapping system that you can pull up a whole map of the county, and there are options to select all kind of different layers, zoning classification, what does the future land use plan designate an area as, where are water lines and sewer lines and manholes and all sorts of information and data like that. And so that's a pretty useful tool as well that can help you understand the request and the context of the request. So the tier one of the rezoning process is that staff review, and ultimately that comes to a head in the staff report, which will include a staff recommendation. So the Planning and Development Department, after studying the rezoning application, reviewing all the land use tools that they have, they will produce a big staff report that's often 50 to 100 pages. It'll include the application materials, it'll include staff's analysis, and it's not just the Planning and Development Department, it's also other county departments that are involved in the development process. So DOT will have comments there. The Department of Water Resources will, oftentimes provide comments to these applications. And the Planning and Development Department will make a recommendation. They'll recommend approval, denial of the rezoning request. We also have a couple of variances that we submitted with the application I can get into more detail about. But staff will recommend approval or denial of those as well. The staff report is typically published about a week before the Planning Commission hearings. That publication of the staff report ends step one of the rezoning process. That will be uploaded to the county website, as I said, about a week before the Planning Commission hearing. The easiest place to get to it is the agenda package for the Planning Commission meeting. So Gwinnett County has 2 public hearings before the Planning Commission and also the Board of Commissioners. Those are steps 2 and 3 in the process. And so the county website has, they will publish an agenda for those meetings. It'll tell you all the other cases that are on the agenda, all the other county business that they're getting into. And the agenda will just list the cases, but the agenda package will be a huge document. I mean, it's often 500, 600, 700 pages long, but it'll have our staff report in that package. So that's a place where you can find that. And again, it should be published about a week prior to the Planning Commission hearing. So Planning Commission public hearing, that's the first of 2 public hearings. That's the second step in the rezoning process. So Gwinnett County has a 9-member Planning Commission. Gwinnett County has 4 geographic districts and a chairwoman who serves county-wide. Each district county commissioner appoints 2 planning commissioners to sit on the Planning Commission, and the chairwoman of the Board of Commissioners has 1 appointment to make it a total of 9. It's their duty to conduct those public hearings for rezonings and special use permits and changing conditions and that sort of thing. And I'll just make a quick note, we do have 2 of the Gwinnett County Planning Commissioners here with us tonight. Anthony Krotzer and Pinky Farver from District 2 are here in the room. Appreciate them coming. And so typically, you know, when at least in my experience, the planning commissioners like to come to these meetings as sort of a, you know, listen and observe, you know, observe and report. They try to not necessarily engage in dialogue and ask or answer a bunch of questions, but did want to point out that they're here, they're invested, and so I'm sure there will be an opportunity to speak with them if you'd like to when the meeting is through. So the public hearing in Gwinnett County, it's the same procedure for Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. When the case is called up by staff, a representative from the Planning Department will come to the podium. They'll make a brief presentation giving an overview of the request. They will share their recommendation and then turn it over to the Planning Commission to conduct the public hearing. There's time for the applicant and opposition to speak. It's 10 minutes per side. At least minimum has been the county procedure, 10 minutes minimum per side. They do, from time to time at their discretion, add time, you know, in equal parts to the applicant side and the opposition side. But the applicant has its 10 minutes to present, the opposition has its 10 minutes to present and make comments, and then the public hearing is concluded, and then the Planning Commission can discuss and deliberate, and they'll make a motion to recommend approval or denial. So their recommendation is then forwarded to the Board of Commissioners, who will hold another public hearing. That's public hearing number 2. And it's the same format as Planning Commission. So staff will make a brief presentation. Then the Board of Commissioners will conduct their hearing, time for the applicant, time for opposition. And then at the conclusion of the public hearing, they will then, you know, deliberate and then make the final decision. The county will also sometimes, either at Planning Commission or Board of Commissioners, sometimes they will table a matter. That's one of the options that they can do. So sometimes they'll table it up front without conducting the public hearing. Sometimes they'll conduct the public hearing, hear from everybody, and decide that they need more time to deliberate or they want additional information, so then they'll table the vote. And that happens from time to time at both the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners level. So based on the timing of our application submittal and formal acceptance by the county, the public hearings are scheduled for May. So the Planning Commission is currently scheduled for May the 5th, and the Board of Commissioners on May the 19th at their regularly scheduled public hearing meetings. You'll get another letter if you own property within 1,000 feet of the subject property. You'll get another letter in the mail providing notice of those public hearings. So with that overview of the process, I'll go into just candidly, just kind of a high-level overview of the proposed development, touching on a few things, and then we can enter into, you know, kind of that discussion and Q&A phase. So the proposed development is a 4-lease mixed residential community under the county's RIF zoning classification. RIF is an interesting new zoning classification that was adopted with the last, or the second to last zoning ordinance amendment. It stands for residential-infill. And so the idea there is in areas that have been heavily developed or mostly developed, to provide a zoning classification that gives flexibility to property owners and developers to provide, it's a residential district, so housing options with flexible development standards, setbacks and things like that. And they're also flexible as to the housing types. So most most zoning classifications in Gwinnett County are kind of focused on one main, housing type, at least on the residential side, right? So you've got, your multifamily, you've got your apartment zoning classifications. There's an RTH, which is residential townhomes. That's focused on townhomes. And then you've got a variety of single-family detached zoning classifications that differ in, maximum density and lot size and things like that. And so the idea, as I understand for RIF, was to try to provide an opportunity or an avenue for property owners to provide, mixed residential developments. Y'all may have heard this missing middle term that I started, hearing about more and more recently. But the idea really is to have more housing options in between single-family detached homes and apartments, with kind of growth in the area and changes that the Gwinnett County Comprehensive Plan discusses about changes in housing size and number of children in households, things like that. To have a zoning classification that accommodates these newer housing types. And so that's where you'll see things like single-family detached homes are accommodated in RIF, townhomes are accommodated in RIF, as well as cottage courts, which is kind of a newer housing type, at least for Metro Atlanta. There hasn't been a lot of those, but that can include, smaller single-family detached homes that aren't necessarily, parked in a garage. A lot of times those are like a surface level parking lot where you park, your car and get out and walk into the front door, as well as, other attached housing types like duplexes, triplexes, and quads. And the idea is to just try to provide a diversity of housing types, and I think for a variety of reasons. I think one of the big ones is, and I'm sure y'all have heard a lot about, but housing affordability has become a big talking point, not just locally but nationally. And so I think it's part of the effort to address housing affordability. I mean, I think there's something to be said for addressing cost issues on the supply side, but also having housing types that aren't don't have all the inherent higher development costs of single-family detached homes on large lots, and that coincides with what is discussed in the comprehensive plan, sort of shifting demographics in parts of the county where you do have smaller average household size. So in the 1980s, I can't remember the numbers offhand, but the average household size was larger. There were more, people were having more kids. There were more, two-parent households with 3 or 4 kids than there are today. And so with different household sizes, different housing preferences, I think the county is trying to provide options for people that desire a different type of housing product. And so that's what we're proposing on the subject property. It's a total of 280 units with a mix of single-family detached homes, duplex units, which is the technical term. I think duplex, some people, sneer a little bit at the term duplex, but I have been seeing more and more of that type of development in Metro Atlanta, as well as townhomes in the proposed development. So we have a combination of parking styles, for lack of a better characterization. So some of the units will have garages. Some of these townhome units have one-car garages that residents will be able to park their car in and access the unit through the interior. But a lot of the units will be surface parked, right? So it's like a parking lot where you park your car and then walk to the front door. Amenities for the community will include a clubhouse, a pool, so some active amenities in the way of those features. Those are located at the southern end of the site, closer to the main entrance. But then also some smaller green spaces and pocket parks, you could call them, and little courtyards spread throughout the development, just to provide, smaller accessible green spaces for residents to, recreate, sit, walk their dogs, that sort of thing, in the community. So that's a super high level overview of the proposed development, and I'll share just a little bit about the applicant's thought process and analysis that we did on the front end as we submitted the application to Gwinnett County. But of course, when you're doing your due diligence on a development like this, you want to look and say, well, is the proposed development compatible with surrounding zoning classifications and land uses, right? Another big consideration here that the county takes into account is the proposed development compatible with the county's own future land use plan? And so a little bit on that, the county has the current future land use plan, which future land use plan is sort of a general term that most jurisdictions in Metro Atlanta will have a future development or future land use plan. They have all different kind of names. Gwinnett County calls theirs the comprehensive plan. We're currently on the 2045 comprehensive plan, and what that is a policy document, essentially, that the county updates about every 5 years. There's a process that's outlined by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs and the Atlanta Regional Commission, which Gwinnett County is in the Atlanta Regional Commission. And the idea is for counties to do forward-thinking land use planning. So it's a intensive process that they, as I said, do about every 5 years. But part of that is community outreach. Some of y'all may have participated in some of those community meetings to discuss the latest revision to the comprehensive plan, the 2045 plan. Also, the recent Killian Hill small area plan, that's a component of the comprehensive plan. Some of y'all may have participated in those community meetings or design discussion meetings that the county held while they were in the process of that. But what the comprehensive plan does in a nutshell is, goes out across the county and classifies every part of the county, basically every square foot of the county, into a character area, right? And so I think most people would agree that the land use policies for, Stone Mountain Highway corridor, Killian Hill, over by Gas South, are going to be different, among themselves, but also different for, areas like Centerville or Harbins that different parts of the county probably would recommend different land uses based on the context, based on, traffic corridors and access to utilities and all that sort of thing. So the subject property is in the low mix future development map area, character area. And so what that is that's a mixed use designation, and the county recommends for land that's in the low mix character area a mix of uses at a lower density and intensity than what's recommended in the high mix or some of the other higher intensity mixed use designations like urban high, urban low, things like that. And so the low mix encourages specifically RIF as an appropriate zoning classification. It lists out a variety of housing types that it encourages, including multifamily, like apartments. So we're not proposing apartments, 3, 4, 5-story apartments or anything like that, but those at least are listed among the appropriate uses for the low mix. The Killian Hill small area plan, so we have the benefit, because the county endeavored to do a small area plan, you have kind of a zoomed in view and specially tailored land use policies for a smaller area. So it's not just the, what does the county recommend for low mix wherever it is in the county, but specifically the Killian Hill small area plan provides recommended land use for this specific area. And so that's a good policy document that's worth looking through. And so both of those, both the general, comprehensive plan and the Killian Hill small area plan, recommend that missing middle housing. They recommend those smaller lots, single family detached, the cottage style units, townhomes, things like that. And those housing types, including the duplexes, are specifically encouraged for that area. So we looked at that as part of the application drafting process. And so that's an overview of kind of our thought process in submitting the application, the proposed development, the county's process. And so, like I said, we don't have a very formal agenda tonight. I think we have a larger group, and thanks again for coming out, but I think we may just want to, before we open it up, I'll ask Sean with Middleburg if you have any specific background about Middleburg or y'all's vision for the site that you'd like to share.
Thanks, Shane. Good evening, y'all. I appreciate everyone taking their time tonight to come out and learn about our project. I just want to introduce myself really fast. I'm Sean Roscoe with Middleburg Communities. I've been a developer here in Metro Atlanta for a little over a decade and grew up over in Kennesaw and went to UGA. So very passionate about what I do and want to provide a beautiful, nice housing community for Gwinnett County. So a little bit about Middleburg. We are a fully vertically integrated rental, a high quality, attainable rental housing company. So we develop communities that really focus on that 25 to 40-year-old missing middle. And really what we've seen over the last decade is the average first-time home buyer going from 28, which was 2014, to 32 pre-COVID. Last year was 38, and this year is 40. So you've got this massive gap of young professionals making good money with expendable income that are ready for a home that cannot afford them or choosing not to live in homes. And so the community that we're proposing here is exactly that fit. So it's going to be the folks that want to live in Gwinnett County that are really 25 to 40 years old, young professionals well into their career, and not ready to purchase their first single family home or townhome in the area. But they are ready to be out of the apartment and have a little bit more space. So our communities have everything from pet spas to fitness centers to resort-style amenities and pools, and then in these communities that we call Hamlet, we've got all kinds of pocket parks and connectability between units and housing types, and a lot of times in these communities, the little pocket parks that have between 5 and 10 units surrounding them end up being a small community on their own. So you've got people doing weekly dinners with each other and making friends and lasting relationships. And we've seen a lot of really good success with these communities across the East Coast, including in Charleston, where we just won the #1 BTR community in the country. So I'm looking forward to working with y'all and hearing everyone and what they have to say, and looking forward to providing a beautiful new Class A community that'll help support the Gwinnett County area. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. So what we'll do here is I've got a second microphone that we can just pass around. Ryan, would you maybe be able to just, as folks kind of raise their hands, or and it's fine if you just have a question and you want to. Let's do at least like raising hands, and let me try to call on people. This happens, every meeting. There will be somebody who's had their hand up for a while that I haven't called on. It's not on purpose, I promise. We do want to get to everybody, and so if your voice can make it up here and folks can hear it, then go for it. But we've got microphones if you want to be heard as well. But it sounds like this gentleman right here. Do you have a?
Let me get back to basics. For our group here, your part in this, you're representing the developers. And of course, your firm's going to get a fee out of that. That's your total interest. Is that correct?
Yes, I represent the applicant. That's right.
Okay. And has the property already been bought?
No, sir. No, the Middleburg Communities has the property under contract.
Okay, and Middleburg, I think, is famous for building subdivisions and renting out the bulk of it and sell some off, or not.
So Sean can give you some details, but this is planned as a out-of-the-gate rental community of all units. You've probably heard the build-to-rent name. That's what they're planning, and maybe there's some little information you can give.
Yeah, sure.
All right, look, let's try. I know there's going to be things that y'all hear tonight that you don't like, but to try to make this a productive meeting for everybody, let's try to keep that kind of thing to a minimum. We'll try to answer all the questions that we can, but John, you have any extra you want to share on that?
Yeah, so this community is a rental product, and it is a full-time managed community. So instead of a lot of BTR, build to rent, that has got such a bad connotation, is really a failed townhome community that someone has come in, an old pipe farm, and they throw in rental properties that have subpar amenities, subpar finishes, and they're managed and maintained from offsite. So you have all of these rental properties that were initially developed as single-family for-sale product. What we come in and do is we develop from the ground up as a rental community from the very beginning that is highly amenitized, and it is managed on-site by professionals and is owned long-term. So these properties are meant from day one to be rental properties, and like I said, they serve the missing middle that the United States, Georgia, Gwinnett County has such a need for, and it is that 25 to 40-year-old young professional that's looking to get into a home for their home.
Ma'am? Yes. Ryan, right down here in the front.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
I have several questions. Will this complex be on sewer or septic?
Sewer. And
the river runs behind your property? Does it run alongside it as well? I can't tell from
No, ma'am. I'll step down here to the board. So on the site plan, this is the Yellow River at the northern end of the site. That forms our, essentially our northern property line. Over here on the side, we are adjacent to, there's an industrially zoned piece. There's actually two kind of long and narrow industrially zoned pieces that are next to us here on the west side, in between us and the game range, or Yellow River Wildlife Facility.
Sanctuary.
So
Sanctuary.
3 pieces of property to the other side of the river coming down.
Right, yes, if you're going west from the subject property, 1, 2 are industrial, 3 is the wildlife sanctuary.
So it looks like to me from the roadway, and maybe you can help me here, it looks like your property, or this piece of property, sits up pretty high.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's when you, similar, so pulling in tonight, you went up the driveway, that's, the subject property has a similar condition. So coming in off of that, Stone Mountain Highway, parallel road, access road, you'd be going uphill to about here-ish. This is that cell tower that's on the property. You'd be going uphill to about there, and then it evens off, and it's essentially flat from about here on back.
And I noticed you have the detention pond on the left side of the property, and I'm assuming that's because the water runs downhill toward the river. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So, with water, it goes downhill, so we try to work with the existing topography where we can. And so over here, this is this plateau, but before you get to the property line, it starts to drop off a little bit, and there is a little bit of a taper moving to the north, back towards the river. And so the engineers just determined that was the location that the stormwater management had to go.
And just 2 more questions.
And thank you, Sean, that there's actually an existing stormwater pond in that general area that we're going to plan to put our stormwater management in that section.
And I'm assuming you would maintain it and have it inspected and do all the things that they have to do. But it looks like it runs into the river.
So that's right. So this facility would be privately owned and maintained by the property owner, according to Gwinnett County actually has pretty stringent stormwater management requirements. more stringent than I think some other jurisdictions in Metro Atlanta, but I'm no expert, so I won't just start throwing out vocabulary terms that I don't understand. But the general rule of thumb is that the property in its developed condition can't discharge more stormwater or at a higher velocity than it discharges in its undeveloped condition. So basically, when we add impervious surface to the subject property, we have to account for that. And so the community will have, curb and gutter, like a lot of subdivisions, stormwater pipe that'll collect all that stormwater, route it to the stormwater management facility, the detention pond, and it will hold it there. Gwinnett County has requirements on how much water can be discharged in a certain time period. I think they've even got water quality standards. And so it is essentially treated in that stormwater management pond and then discharged, and then it'll flow, just gravity flow, sheet flow down into this floodplain area and ultimately into the river.
And I'm kind of disappointed that I thought this development was going to be looking for young people who wanted to buy their first house. So I'm disappointed that it's all going to be rental. Two more questions. Can you tell me what the rental range is for these properties?
Like the just monthly rent?
The monthly.
So all-inclusive rents will range from around $1,700 to a little over $2,500 a month. And I know that sounds like a lot.
It is one.
It is. I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. But on average, our comparable units compared to for sale product, when you include mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, are $750 to $1,000 cheaper per month.
So when you say all inclusive, that doesn't include utilities.
No, so we bill back for utilities, and I'm not including utilities in the for sale analysis either. I'm including all of our amenities, internet, and living expense.
So if I hear you correctly,
Yes.
what you're saying is that range doesn't include the utilities that would sit on top of that range for each unit. Is that what I heard?
And I'm also saying that I did not take into consideration utilities when you buy a home either. So I guess if you add utilities to each one, it would come out to the same.
Right. Well, all inclusive, I was just curious what that meant. And that's the last question I have.
Over here.
We had over here in the green. Yeah, no, I see it. Just remember, we got a big room. I will see the hands. I promise I'm not going to ignore anybody. But this person over in the green has had their hand up from the start.
Hello, I have several questions. One is, how big is a pocket park?
Yeah. So
Is that
they
half an acre? Is that a quarter acre?
smaller. So they vary in size. So for example, it depends, right? There's no set square footage area, but so this little park area right here towards the front of the development is approximately 10,000 square feet. This open space surrounding the club is about 16,000 square feet. This one up here is 8,100. This courtyard's about 10,000. So they vary, but they're meant to just be kind of those smaller green spaces mixed throughout the
So for these young professionals you're hoping to have move in here that have kids, where are they gonna go play soccer and volleyball?
Yeah, so we're not planning to do a soccer field as an amenity
No,
or
but
volleyball
they just need open
courts.
space.
Right, but I don't have soccer fields or volleyball courts in my subdivision either. And so we also have this large area of green space closer to the river. We want to try to, it's so right, we're not going to build a clubhouse down there, but I think there's some opportunities that we didn't have on the site plan, but there's some opportunities for more passive recreation, nature trails. I know that the county, I think in their latest trails master plan, they had a greenway in this area, so we're trying to work with the county to see what we can do to facilitate that as well.
I'm worried about the animals that are, that have been living in Gwinnett County longer than I have. I was born in Gwinnett County. I've lived here my whole life. And it's gone from green to brown to black to just pure asphalt.
Right.
And I worry about the water runoff going into Yellow River and what it does to the river and all of that. I mean, can y'all go out there, whoever buys the property, can they be required to plant all that open space real quick with Sericia lesbonesa or something, some kind of nitrogen producing lagoon that would stop the runoff into Yellow River and protect the Yellow River sanctuary? That's not the
Yeah, so I think there's definitely an opportunity to do that. We try, to mix in some of that, pervious surface, right, like non-paved, kind of the grass areas throughout the community. And I think that's a good time to highlight one of the differences between the proposed development and its current zoning, right? So first, the condition of the property is, it's basically a moonscape, right? Like it's graded. This is not the areas of the property which would contain these units in the driveways is not the wooded floodplain at the northern end of the site. It's that flat moonscape that's already been cleared and graded and filled there. So there's not going to be a ton of land clearing that has to take place because the property's already been cleared in that regard. But when you compare it to its current zoning, which is that M1 light industrial, those types of zoning classifications, those developments often have more stormwater runoff than this would, right? Because they don't have those green spaces mixed throughout that are going to catch some of that stormwater. It's a big, flat slab of concrete with the parking areas and the large, office warehouse distribution buildings, which is what the property's zoned for now. And so, any development is going to cause runoff, but we think this, if runoff is your main concern, I would submit respectfully that this would be better in that specific, comparison to if the property were developed as an industrial use per its current zone. Yes, so, not doing it on purpose. Yes, sir.
I think for a lot of us, the issue really is the Yellow River Wildlife Sanctuary. I don't care about low density, high density, how it's zoned. What I would like to see is that thing stopped and the Yellow River expanded into it. Now, I understand the owner of Yellow River that tried to buy that property was I understand that the owner of the property in the past had tried to buy the property but could not. And there may be some zoning issues, okay? But frankly, we don't need any more rental property in this area. Number two, it's going to be a liability disaster to put that next to a wildlife preserve where you have bears, alligators, and wolves. And there are other properties that are available that you probably would not get this kind of pushback on. Right up 78, we've got two huge box stores that have been vacant for 10 years. Okay? Go there and do it yourself. Okay? Don't do it here. Because I think if we took a show of hands, you'd probably say most people were against this. Show me your hand. Who's against this development? Completely against this development. Forget all the details and the process and everything else. What you're doing is against the people that live in this area's wishes. Okay? And so, why don't you just back off, find a piece of property? And that's my comment.
Thanks. Yep, right there toward in the middle.
How much money do you expect to make from this?
All right, so 280 units would have about 600 cars coming in and out. Where are these people going to shop? Where are these people going to drive? There's no street lights, there's nothing. I've been rear-ended and hit because people don't wait. What are your plans of doing for that? As a young homeowner in this area, this is not what my friends and I want. This is not what we could even afford. We're looking for an $800 house where our dog can run free, not some pocket garden with some IT I'm talking from retail traffic.
Yeah, fair point. I think again, it makes sense to kind of compare the proposed development to the current zoning, right? Because it's not zoned for woods, it's not zoned for nature preserve. Right, that's because the property owner, excuse me, give me a second. So the property is zoned for industrial use, right? The only reason it's not industrial use is because the property owner hasn't sold it to an industrial user. It'd be, I don't know, depending on the user that came into that building, I think it would be hundreds of trucks, I think is the difference when you're talking about an industrial use. I think if you were to do like an office warehouse distribution facility, you know, a smaller.
Amazon has those already.
Right.
They're built out.
Right. So I'm saying, I think if you were to compare, like if a traffic engineer were to compare trips generated by a light industrial development compared to the proposed development, I think one, you'd see more vehicle trips generated by the industrial use, which doesn't have to go through the zoning process. And I think it would be a much higher truck traffic as well. I think that's a big difference too. When you're considering traffic impacts, is to look at not just volume, but the type of traffic as well. And I've got some folks over here on the left side that have had their hands up for a while. Ma'am, in the front row, I think you're next.
So many questions. Can you hear me back there? Can you hear me? Okay. I have so many questions. One, does anyone in here remember the flood that caused us to have to raise the bridge right there at the center? All right, is much of your property in the floodplain?
So the subject property does have floodplain at the northern end. We've got that labeled on the site plan here, and so we're not proposing development in the floodplain. We're not proposing to change the flood elevations.
It was a flood that came up over the river. I mean, over the bridge.
Right, and so
significant.
yes, ma'am. So we're not proposing land disturbance in that flood area, and the subject property I think is 30 or 40 feet above that flood elevation.
We couldn't drive on 78.
Pardon?
You couldn't drive on 78 when that happened. If anybody's been here that long.
Right, and I think that must have been a lower spot, but I think the point I'm making is just they raised the bridge. Property where the development is proposed, you know, the specific area of the subject property is well up and above those floodplains.
Okay. The second observation that I have is that we have one entrance into this area right now. And I realize that that's going to change as you develop this new city that you're developing. But I've driven 78 to work for way more than I would like to tell you. And the commute into Atlanta for these young professionals who may be driving that far to Decatur or Atlanta is 45 minutes on a good day, all right? So are you putting in some kind of a mechanism into your new community that's going to provide transportation, even if it's just transportation to the express lots? Because adding, as you pointed out, that many cars to the road is stunning. If the news people who are here can take a picture of 78 somewhere between 4:30 in the afternoon and 6:30 at night, and or the lovely ride in the morning where you recognize people that you're commuting with, and you recognize their trucks, and you know whether or not they had their truck washed or their car washed. It's just stunning to me, and I realize that that's part of the tools that they'll be looking at in terms of zoning. But it's hard for us to envision without an overview of the property that you're going to use and the egress and the ingress into this development. And the school system, the schools. Are we even thinking about, as young professionals, if I were a young professional, there'd be no way I'd be letting go $24,000 a year on something I didn't own or I wasn't building any equity into this development. How do you envision that? Are they going to be luxury apartments, luxury little cottages? Just having a high-end stove is not the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway, I apologize.
Yeah, no, fair points, and, you know, it's, I think that's kind of the idea, is to have housing types for people that have different preferences, right? And it's not for everybody, you know, I think, based on some of the discussion I've heard, I think a lot of people here probably prefer to live on a single family, you know, in a single family detached home on a, you know, large lot as you can get, I think is what a lot of people prefer. But some people, especially folks that have smaller households that are younger, they do prefer, they're not afraid of that smaller lot, that smaller product. And the proposed development, we are in the Shiloh High School cluster, which part of the staff report, the county will produce enrollment and capacity data. That'll be in the staff report. But based on the latest numbers that I looked at, Shiloh High School, I think, is under capacity by a couple hundred students based on the last data that I saw. But fair points. I mean, the traffic certainly is a concern. I mean, look, I'm not going to get up here and say traffic's fine. What are you talking about? You know, I get it. I mean, I think Highway 78 has, to the west of the subject property, something like 60,000 vehicles a day, and I think to the east it's something like 50,000. Sorry, sir. And so it's like 50,000 vehicles a day. So I know it's a serious concern, and it's something that folks that live in the area are concerned about. So, sir, so
my sons, my grandsons, and my great-grandsons have been going to this park all these years. We don't want it disturbed with.
So I think, I just want to point out, I think there may be some misinformation about our location. So just to be clear, we're not adjacent to the wildlife sanctuary, right? Like the subject, no, I'm just, you may feel like it's close enough, and that's fine, but I'm just saying, I did see some comments that said we were adjacent to it. So I just want to clear that up. We are not adjacent to the wildlife park over there. There's two parcels that are in between us. Y'all, it makes it difficult to respond to people's questions if there's hollering from the peanut gallery. So, sir, what I'm going to do is, if you got somewhere to be, then that's your call. But I do want to point out that we are not adjacent to the wildlife sanctuary. There's two intervening parcels that are zoned M1, also industrially zoned property, and I think from property line to property line, it's about 280 feet. And then the units on the west side of the property are about 50 feet or so off the property line. So it's over 300 feet of distance, which is different. You know, you may still feel like that's too close, but it's not adjacent to it. So, sir, behind the woman.
Thank you. I've been here since 1985. I think we're kind of missing the point here. I think there's two. It's not only the wildlife, but it's the traffic. You know, I don't know. I'm going to ask the developer, do you guys live here? Do you live in this area? So when you build this thing, you're going to be gone. We are going to have to deal with this. Like we have to. We can't even get up and down 78 from where I live over to the mountain. It's just brutal. Five Forks is the same. Any of these other roads are the same. The bottom line here is that with all this word salad of this kind of stuff, you guys are going to make a big amount of money, and we're going to have to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it. We've had enough. At some point, we got to say, Gwinnett County, there's no more space here. We got to tell the commissioners, whatever we do, we got to tell them there's no more space here. There's no more room at the end. We can't, it doesn't matter whether you got, the lady over here made a great point. How many units are there? 280. How many cars do you think that's going to add to this? How do you think they're going to get in and out of here? How are we going to have to get behind them and go somewhere just to do something? Common sense tells us it doesn't matter what you're talking about young professionals, all that kind of stuff. When you guys build this, you guys are gone, and we got to deal with it. What we're telling you is we don't want to have to deal with that. We know you got to make money. Everybody's got to make a living, but don't make it on our backs. That's what we're trying to say. Quit making it on our backs. We have got to live here and get around, and it's almost a nightmare. It's the same thing over on 124. That used to be called Scenic Highway. Now every inch of it is taken. Try to shop over there at Christmas, you can't get around. It's good, it's like that over here. So why are you trying to bring more stuff in here under the word salad? I mean, you're doing us a favor.
Well,
Why is that? You're not doing us a favor. You're making money on our backs.
I'm not doing you any favors. I never
You're right. You're not
claimed
doing
it.
it. I tell you what, whatever you're making, we'll pay you double to go against these guys. How about that?
You know, I think,
How about that?
yeah, so I mean, fair point. I mean, I think it's the same, you know, traffic is certainly a concern, and I don't know, look, you don't have to take my word for it. Traffic engineers, there's a whole profession of people who are licensed by the state of Georgia to do traffic analysis, and it's our view that if the property were developed for the industrial use that it's zoned for, which means you don't have the phase one community engagement, you don't have the rezoning hearings, you don't have the votes before the planning commission or the board of commissioners, it just goes straight to the development side. So there's no community input if somebody were to go build a warehouse. And that's something we can look at as the applicant team is getting some actual numbers from a traffic engineer, but it's my view that if developed under its current industrial zoning classification, you have much more negative traffic impacts just through volume and through the number of trucks that would be driving on those same roads. And so, but moving, yeah, you don't have to take my word for it though. So moving back this way across the room, gentleman right here in the black jacket.
Yes, sir. I know this has been addressed, but I know you were asking for questions. So my question to you would be, what are you doing as far as looking at the impact to the animals at the sanctuary? What type of studies are you guys doing on that? What type of plans do you have to ensure the health and safety of those animals and to ensure that it remains a thriving place in this community? I'm curious what you guys are doing towards that.
I think the best way to do that is for us to not just try to make up solutions, but engage with the facility owner to try to see if there's a way that we can address the concerns of that facility rather than us just, taking a stab in the dark. And so I spoke with Mr. Ordway earlier tonight. We hadn't had the opportunity to speak about this development prior to tonight, but this is kind of the whole point of this meeting the idea is, that we get that community engagement, we hear from the neighbors, and, we knew that we weren't going to convert everybody, and everybody walks out the door thinking, this is the best thing ever, I love it, I want the county to approve it, but at least what we can do is hear really what is driving the concerns, really what's on people's minds, and try to address it. And that's the best we can do, is try to address those concerns. And we may not get there, we may find a good solution, we may not, but I will at least make a commitment here that we'll be willing to engage with anybody who's concerned about what we're doing and try to find solutions to mitigate those concerns as best we can. So, moving back. I'm gonna try to move from
Yeah, I've had
left
my
to
hand
right.
up for like 15
Sir, we got two mothers over here who would like to speak.
Okay.
I mean, you want young professionals, right? Whether they have kids or not. Okay, so I don't need a microphone. Don't make you work any harder. Quick question. One. Okay, I'll get really loud. Use like my former cheerleader voice. Awesome. So, one, thank you guys for coming. At least, I don't want to say acting like you care. I'm gonna take a different stance. We could sit here all night and talk about save my job, save the animals, which, by the way, 9 of our 37 species are endangered. If anything happens, do you want that on your conscience? Second of all, from a business aspect. From a business.
Ryan's coming. The hollering doesn't help, believe it or not, to being able to hear.
Okay. From a business aspect, you said that these are going to range between 2,000, maybe 3,000 for rental properties?
It's like 1,700 to 2,500.
Okay, let's be technical. Okay, have you looked up the median yearly salary of the person that lives in Lilburn?
I'm sure we've
It's
done some
$65,000.
research on the area median income.
Yes, it's $65,000. So how do you expect someone to spend $3,000 on a rental property when they're making $65,000 a year in this area? Like, I truly want to understand your business logic on that.
Yeah, I think, do you want to take that? We might have different numbers on the AMI.
Our AMI that we pulled for this particular zip code was $79,000. And I know it doesn't sound like a whole lot.
No, it does.
A whole lot different, but it
Couple
is.
pennies.
It's about a third. So, yeah, and if you take a third of that, that is what you should be spending on housing each month.
Okay. And were you aware that Lilburn's poverty rate is 24%, which is twice as much as Georgia's poverty rate, which is 12%?
I understand that, and this housing is not for everyone. Clearly, the folks in this room would not.
So, like,
would
true
not choose to live
question.
here.
Who are you going for? Because we're families. We're people that have been here since before I was born. All of this wonderful. These young professionals are people that will be commuting. They don't have kids. They're like, hey, I need cheap housing, $3,000 a month. And 100,000 people commute from out Gwinnett to inside perimeter. I guess, basically, I just wanted to put this in your brain. You don't have a heart, you don't have a heart. That's fine. Sleep at night however you want. If I were in your job, never, but I was like, hey, here's free land next to a endangered animal wildlife sanctuary, that's probably not a good idea. Like, I just kind of want to put that in your brain. The face is not necessary. I'm sure you don't have a lot of those thoughts, like you're all here for money. That was pretty much it. I was going to try to have like a business standpoint, but yeah. Okay, never mind. You don't care, you don't care.
Going back left to right. Sorry, Ryan, I'm sending it back across. Sorry. So as Ryan's making his way over, we're trying to get to everybody. Yes, you've had your hand up for a while. Yes, I promise I'm not doing it on purpose, and I'll stay here as long as y'all want to. The church may ask us to leave. I think we've only got the place booked until about 7:30, but I'm happy to talk to anybody for as long as you want to talk. And I'll just real quick, not trying to stall for time here. We are happy to have further discussion. If we can't get it all done in one meeting, we're happy to do another one, as much as we can do. So, yes.
Hi. I've lived here most of my life, and of course, I'm very interested in how this place, the city is developed. I am part of the population you speak of that wants to be able to buy a home here. And my problem with all this is that I tried. And with the numbers that you're telling me, there's no way that I can take care of my elderly parents who do own large lots here. And then I also, the question would be is, how are you going to mitigate development, right? So I'm a big activist. I work at Yellow River, volunteer, let's go volunteer. But I also work in the community right up the street on 78, Stone Mountain Hwy Cafe. I've worked there since I was 15, I'm 35. So I also commute here from the city because I cannot afford to live here and take care of my family. But that's beyond the point. What I want to know is with development, you're also, that land you say would not be developed unless the developer is going to sell it for industrial purposes. So it would be left alone. And that's a big thing. Why is that a big thing? Well, if you live in a city, you know that if you develop any land, there is an ecosystem there. There are coyotes. There are animals that are going to lose their homes, and then they're going to encroach on those developments. So where people live. So are you prepared to mitigate wildlife like coyotes coming into your neighborhoods? Your children? That's something to think about. That's something to think about, actual wildlife coming into a residential area, outside of the sanctuary. But then I also consider the fact that if you live near 78, you get to hear those sirens pretty much all day. And then you hear the coyotes. Where? The coyotes from the sanctuary. And you can hear them for miles out. So what about the people who are moving into your community? Are they going to be warned about this? Are they gonna be aware that there is an animal sanctuary with endangered animals that make noise? And my last one would be, is how are you gonna market this community? How are you gonna take this organized community plan and get people to live there? And of my population, how are you gonna get people that are already cannot afford to live where you are at that price point and convince them to move there? Those are my three.
Yeah, no, fair points and good question. I think it's just generally, not every housing type will suit every person, right? I mean, there are some people that want the big house on the big lot, but they're not in that position, and so they're renting an apartment, right? Or they're renting in a townhome, or they live in a townhome, right? It's just the type of housing that you select is just sort of, what your preferences are and what your budget is. And so I think what Sean was talking about is based on their market research and sort of the housing preferences that they've observed in their own operations, but also you don't have to take our word for it. There's a lot of this discussed in the county's comprehensive plan and in the Killian Hill Small Area Plan, where you have the missing middle, right? So you have the housing types that are in between the single-family detached and the apartments. Where are the opportunities for people to have maybe a little bit more space to spread out than an apartment, but doesn't have all the cost burden of a single-family detached home? Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question, and I think the part of it is really, I mean, at least I believe that if you're talking about cost issues, the supply side of the equation matters. I mean, just supply and demand, I think that's generally accepted. And so by having more housing units available, that gives residents more choice, and they have, options to move between one or the other. And so I think that helps with the affordability. I mean, if you were to, and so, the land is for sale, right? Like my client, the applicant has it under contract, right? Like the land is for sale, right? And so if somebody were to purchase that property and develop it for single family detached, right? Like on large lots, then it'd be way more expensive, right? And then you're talking about really being out of that attainable, kind of quasi workforce bracket. And so I think it's trying to, split the difference there between, the land zoning, the sales price. Yeah, right. No, fair. No, fair point. Yes, ma'am. Fair point. Sir in the black standing.
Technical question. What is your square footage of impervious for development on this property?
Oh, great question. I don't know the whole number of the impervious
Shouldn't you know that?
Surface area, but we can get that calculated, and I don't think we have it on the
one of your the target audience here, but I also build factories. So M1 zoning is where I work in, and that's usually 50% impervious ground coverage. 29-acre lot, that's 15 acres, 650,000 square feet. You're talking big industry making this industrial, but no one's going to make a big industrial facility on 650,000 square feet of operable space. So,
Can you buy the property?
Big industry, big industrial, it's going to work. And one is light industrial.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, and look, I could be wrong, but my view is that if you developed it according to the current zoning, I think you'd have more impervious surface, not just with the building square foot, not just the area under the roof, but
Right,
you got to factor in the truck courts and the parking and all
right,
that.
Gravel, even in certain zoning areas, M1 is still under 50, it's 50% without exception.
I don't know that the county has a max impervious, but no, fair point. It's a good question, and we'll work to get some more specific numbers on that. So, wait, okay, Ryan, let's go. Yeah.
Very objective question. If this rezoning doesn't pass, is that contract gone? Is it contingent? Is your contract to buy this land contingent on the rezoning?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do is make sure we have. I want to give another observation. know why nobody's building on this land and you want to rezone? Because nobody wants to come up in here and do light industrial with all of these road problems. This land could probably sit here another 20 years with nothing on it. So we'll fight that. So don't say we could have that if we didn't have this. We'll fight that too. But that's what we have to do, is we have to make sure this rezoning doesn't pass or his contract is gone.
Just to be clear, if somebody wanted to build a light industrial facility on the property, they don't have to get it rezoned. They don't have to do community meetings.
But you do.
Don't have to go to the county. Just to be clear on that. So, trying to work left to right. So
Come on over to the right here. Come on over to the right. Right here.
All right, Ryan, I think this side of the room has been a little neglected.
The whole city is being neglected by your idea.
So it's not on purpose. I'm trying to get to everybody. So. Right in the front row, right here.
She's doing it for her. She's raising her hand for me. She's actually, we're both, come on. Yes, right here. Yes, I've been holding it up. That's still not gonna do it.
I'll pass it to somebody over here when I'm all finished. Just a quick question. This is Middleburg Investment, correct? Middleburg?
Middleburg Communities is the.
And gotcha. The property that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, somewhere in Savannah, or wherever it is.
Charleston.
Charleston. Does your company look statistically at the property values of homeowners, of single-family homeowners such as myself, who's owned my home for 20 plus years, just a mile from here? Does your company look at the impact that your rental communities have on my single-family home value? Does your company do that?
I'll let Sean answer, but I think, I'm not sure that if the proposed development is constructed, we don't anticipate a negative impact on property values of single-family residential in the area. I mean, I think in part, we're not adjacent to the single-family detached residential. I think there's some separation there. I don't know if you've got any kind of specific.
But I am just curious, because no shade to anybody who rents, because in this day and age right now where the inflation, everything that's going on, it's difficult. The rise of wage is not comparable to inflation. I understand. I was lucky enough at the age of 23 to purchase my home. I get it. Not everybody's as lucky to be able to do that. However, large communities, rental communities, apartments, townhomes, whatever it is that you're proposing, are generally noted for devaluing the home cost or the value in the area. I'm just curious if you guys have done that math for us.
I don't know that I've seen those statistics, but I will say I think one thing that's at play is, from just what I've heard from people doing meetings like this across the county, there is a concern about the rental. I think there's a debate to be had there about it. People have concerns, and so I think it's good to talk about it. But I think from what I've heard, a lot of the concerns or negative experiences that people have with rentals, a lot of times, is in a community, like Sean mentioned at the beginning, that was initially developed for owner-occupied homes, like fee simple ownership, and for whatever reason, maybe during the crash, development stalled out, and you had the pipe farm with just the sewer pipe sticking out of the ground, or for whatever reason, a lot of times you'll see in older neighborhoods that don't have very strict HOAs, you'll see investors go in, kind of mom and pop investors, and buy a house here, a house there, and that's where you have those, out-of-town landlords that aren't really paying attention. The grass doesn't get cut, the house isn't painted regularly, and a lot of times when people have negative experience with rental properties, it's that context. And so what's different about Middleburg is they own all of the units, right? And they manage it for long-term ownership, right? It's not like a quick flip and then rent to make a quick buck. It's that more long-term strategy with on-site, professional management. The leases in these, there's a lot more flexibility on the landlord side for things that you can restrict than what you can do for somebody who owns their home, right? So sometimes, and I don't know if this is something specific that Middleburg does, but a lot of times there's restrictions on, the number of occupants per bedroom, right? And the county has some restrictions on that kind of, but that's not something that an HOA can really regulate, right? But that's something that a landlord who owns the community can regulate, throwing parties, right? The county is not, they can't ban parties, right? It can't, but it has the noise ordinance, but the landlord has different tools available to restrict that. So when you have those types of communities that are more closely managed, on-site property management, it often is a very different situation. So hopefully that was responsive. And then I think we had next right over here.
I'm going to just piggyback off of what she stated. Y'all have all answered all the questions that I've had. Impact study over there.
Impact study over there, thank you for bringing that up. The contingent upon rezone, that's very, very important. That's the only power that the people have, is that the contract is contingent upon a rezone. Please don't clap, I don't have just a minute. You, ma'am, wherever she was, she brought it up with what would be the negative impact of rentals. I'm going to ask you the opposite of that. What does this bring positive to our community? And let me just ask a couple questions. Because you've said there's going to be 280 residents in there, 600 cars, there's not going to be a red light, there's going to be wash off, it's going to be, whatever the impact is to Yellow River, it's going to be significant in my point of view, and I actually am here for the animals and only the animals, but as you've talked, I've become more and more against it, because Lord knows no one wants that huge rental community there. So it's not going to improve our values. You had just stated that if it did go for larger houses, that they'd have to go through permits and this and that, but those will be established residents that have been sold as a comp for other people to sell their house to. There's no comparables for this rental. This doesn't help anybody in our community. Your community, you're creating an isolated community with resentment around it, in my opinion. Because of all of those rental properties right there, what are you bringing? What are your people bringing to us? Is there new streets? Is there stops? Is there red lights? Is there what? Because as far as I can tell, y'all are making a lot of money from here on out, because that's the new way as a corporation to go in and own an entire community now. That's the new way corporations are making more and more money, which, hey, do yours, but not here, not next to Yellow River. What are you bringing to the community? What benefits are you bringing to us? Tell me one good thing.
Yeah, so kind of a two-parter there. I do think you could look for some comparables to, there's an apartment complex to the east, Paxton Place or Paxton Apartments, I think. And so I think that's something where people who are in the market, who are looking to rent, who've made the decision to rent for whatever reason or another, would probably look at that community, they'd look at the subject property, and I think there's a lot of advantages that this community would offer compared to those traditional apartments. I think the amenities are different, I think the unit types are different. Not everybody wants to, live in an apartment building. Sometimes people want a little bit of space. Some of the units will have garages. I think that's
Are your units
a
going to
benefit
propose
over
commercial spaces in there as well?
apartments.
Is your community proposing commercial spaces within it as well?
No, ma'am.
It's not, okay.
So a lot of times our communities, like I've said before, is the 25 to 40-year-old population that is post-apartment, pre-home purchase. So these are a lot of young professionals making enough money.
I heard all of that, yes.
Making enough money to live in a nice apartment community or BTR rental community, and they are progressing in their career, and their next stage will be buying a home. So if anything, these new young professionals in the area, which maybe is one of the 60,000 cars a day going by, is stopping there, making their life in Lilburn and in Gwinnett, and after they're done living in this community, after 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, they're the ones purchasing homes in this area. And while they're living here, they're also they are typically people with expendable income that are helping support local businesses. They're shopping at the grocery stores. They're going to the restaurants, and that is an extra bump to the area.
What restaurants? And I mean, these people that you talk about want to live next to Web Gin. Yeah. We don't have any. We have nothing.
right here in the front row, or second row.
Well, I have a couple questions. One, Sean mentioned that other developers did subpar finishing on their developments, but yet y'all are asking for 2 variances to reduce the UDO standards for the facades and garages. So it seems like the pot calling the kettle black there. And the second question I have is that floodplain based on the 2006 floodplain map that used the 2001 photography for it?
So the first part, yeah, I think what Sean was mentioning was that, you know, that hypothetical townhome community that struggled and became rental after the fact. One of the variances that we requested is relative to the building materials of the homes, and that's really, I mean, you know, I'm sure this will get a chuckle, but I'm sure y'all have heard about this kind of, you know, modern farmhouse or farmhouse style architecture with the, you know, white or creams or, you know, tan kind of finishes. And so the proposed architecture of these homes you can see here doesn't have that heavy percentage of brick. And so that's one of the variances that we requested, is to do these more, you know, board and batten, lap siding, you know, shake style, fiber cement, you know, like the hardy board style building materials. I don't know that it's less expensive. It's certainly, you know, I think it's regarded as a high quality, you know, durable building material. But I mean, if, you know, I think there's, you know, taste is subjective. So, you know, I don't personally see that as a reduction in quality, but I'll concede that folks may differ on that. As to the floodplain, I'm not sure. We probably use the latest GIS data for the floodplain limits, but we're happy to. Yeah, so the surveyors pulled the latest data on the floodplain, but we can dig into that.
FEMA map or the latest?
They probably pulled the boundaries from the latest FEMA firm panels, but we can dig in and try to get.
Years old.
Yeah, so we can get with the engineers to look at that. And the other thing is, so let's say, you know, there's a little bit of difference in the line of the floodplain limits. What's interesting about this property is being already graded and having that steep drop to the back. Whether the floodplain elevation is at X or X plus 5, it's going to run up against that steep slope pretty quickly, right? So I think what that means is that we're high and dry. I think the floodplain limit, and there may be some wiggle in that line, but there's not going to be 30 or 40 feet of difference in that flood line. So, okay, moving back this way, we'll have some folks in the back.
Hi, I'm Mary Grace, and I'm another volunteer from the Wildlife Sanctuary. If anyone could hold any claps or boos till the end, that would be great. So, like you can probably already guess, is I don't want you to build it, but I also know that I'm not going to be the one to talk you out of it. So it's not really a question, it's more of a request, a plea, if you would, is if you do build it, to, like the fellow over there said, please take into account the effect on the animals. The noise stresses them out so much. If there's any way you can mitigate it, anything you can do, meet with the sanctuary owner, it would just be so much appreciated. You know, like I said, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. But if you could just, like I said, anything you could do to just make it as easy as possible for the critters, that would just be so much appreciated. Thank you.
Behind your iron.
I guess my question, and I'm sorry I'm coming in kind of late, but why here? Why out of all the land all over the place that's for sale? And there's a lot. There's what? There's land everywhere. There's land in Walton County, right 5 minutes down the road. There's so much land everywhere. Why here? Why next to the Yellowbrook Game Ranch?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So first of all, you know, we're not adjacent to it. That's splitting hairs on that. I couldn't resist.
You are within walking distance. Within walking distance.
I understand. It's not next door. We don't need to say that again tonight. I hear it. My point is, it's close enough, and it's been here since before any of these people, most any of them were in the room. The owner had it for all the time. So why here is my question.
So
No
I think there's
why here?
a few reasons, right? And so one, if you just look at the pure business side of it, right? You know, I think if you're in the business of building, have a good one. Thank you for sharing it. You're going to look at and you're going to say, where is the nearest major transportation corridor? And I were to say, hey, there's Highway 78, sees 50 to 60,000 vehicles a day. That's, you know, you may remember the billboards. I forget where it was. It says, if you lived here, you'd be home by now, right? So I think that kind of idea applies where people who can, right? And so I think traffic is people going from A to B, right? So if they're working in the city and living out in Snellville or whatever, they're driving through here. And so, okay. And so it's people who, by having more housing options in the area, they're not passing through, they're living here, and you have reduced vehicle trips because they're already in the area. But so to get to your question, the business side of it, right? There's a major transportation corridor, and there's a lot of people who already live in the area, and there's a lot of people who would view living in this area as desirable, right? It's convenient for them. To their right, y'all. Why do you live here, right? I think it's similar reasons to why, right?
Everything
I know,
that we
and
love
so the
is being
point,
taken away.
ma'am, you asked me.
Bars, restaurants. You're saying you're going to the demographic.
You're asking me why. You're asking me why here, and I think I'm trying. I think the reason is on the business side. People want to live here, right? And so if people want to live here, and you're in the business of renting homes to people for money, you will say, that's an opportunity for me. If I build homes there, people will pay me money to live in them. And so I think that's the business side of it, right? I think that's number one. Number two, I think, you know, you try to do the due diligence on the front end and say, well, what are the county's policies, right? And the county, based on their land use policies, encourages this exact type of community on the subject property. And that Killian Hill Small Area Plan strongly encourages that missing middle housing. It specifically calls out the RIF. And so I think the county's own land planning policies would encourage this type of development as well. So those are probably the two main factors that drove the applicant here. So, yes, in the hat. Yes.
Thank you so much. So I know in the beginning you said there were some county commissioners here, members of the planning commission.
Yeah, we had two planning commission members. They may have moved seats.
They probably left. But anyway, so I just want to make before we talked about traffic. I'm sorry, I have my allergies are really acting up. We talked about traffic. I moved here in 2007. When I moved here, I worked in Sandy Springs. All my colleagues said, don't buy that house in Lilburn. I'm like, man, no, I really like it. I like the area. I like everything. They're like, you're going to hate the commute. This was in 2007. This commute has only gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And you people are standing up there saying, oh, but we're trying to go to the young professional. I'm going to tell you right now, that young professional is going to make that commute for about 30 days, and they're going to tell you bye-bye. They're not going to do it because it's too hard. It's too freaking hard. So I don't know. I live off of Killian Hill. You keep talking about this Killian Hill small, but let me tell you what that has done for me. Trying to get anywhere in this area, I can't get anywhere. When I moved here, 78 was 3 lanes, right? It was the middle lane had the light, the red light, and green one way in the morning and green the other way at night, right? Ever since then, it has just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And Mr. Gwinnett County Planning Commissioners, you people, do you even live here? Do you have to commute anywhere? Do you have to go anywhere outside of your general vicinity to get anything done? Because you can't do it.
Wait till Costco.
Yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, and then in the blue jacket right here, about the fourth row back.
Is the HOA fee gonna have like a fee for the ranch people? Did you guys put that in there, like $100 per person that's living in there in the HOA? Did you guys like talk about that? You guys are doing the ranch for disturbance?
Would you support it if we did?
Maybe put it in there. So if we talk about it, you know, but it have to be for real, like 100. We're not talking about like no, every month. just like an HOA fee, it's gonna be a ranch fee. Anybody like that idea? I know you can't pay for that, I know it's all bad, but I'm just saying. I'm not saying that I'm for that, but let's just throw it out there.
I'm sorry.
I said lived in this house since 2003 and drove downtown every day. 20 miles, and it took me an hour and a half. And to get home. My bigger concern is the animals. If you pull that up right next to these places and all these cars and they're honking and they're yelling and they're screaming, that's gonna scare the animals. And and so how close are you gonna build this next to the game range?
So the closest unit is about 335 feet from the property line.
Okay, so show me here how much you think that is.
So a football field is 300 feet long, and so I think this is probably longer than a football field. So, you know, outside over there.
So you got people. So they just built that area out for the bears. They were in closed cages forever. Now they finally got this great area. And then you're going to turn around and put buildings right there. People are coming and going all times of the night, playing music like scary and beepy and horny and the traffic. It's just not right for the animals.
No, I understand the concern, and
There's a lot of there's a lot of shopping centers down there that are totally almost dead. Why don't you take those and do something?
Fair point.
I mean, there's so many empty spaces over there. I mean, and down here things are just, it's just why there. I mean, that's a place that's been here for years. People have taken their grandkids there. People their grandparents now have been there when they were little, and it's a facility that everybody loves and enjoys around here and brings their children to.
No, fair point, and I hope that there's a way that we can, mitigate those concerns and be a good neighbor. I mean, we definitely don't want to, cause a bunch of harm to anybody, right? I mean, I think we understand that there's impacts, right? Any development for any use has impacts, right? And so what we want to do is try to mitigate those as best we can. But I just think not to beat I was going to say beat a dead horse. I don't want to use those type of animal analogies here. I do really think that the industrial development has the potential to have a lot more negative impacts. If you think about, the number of employees in those facilities, trucks backing up, beeping, and all the commotion and banging around. So it's debatable at least, right?
It's not only hurting the animals at the sanctuary, all the people around my house, they're building so much, the deer don't even have anywhere to go anymore. They're finding dead on the road because there's no road for them to go because we're building something everywhere. And this should just be some kind of sanctuary for some of these animals, even the ones that.
There is one, the one we're trying to save.
No, fair point. Ma'am, in the front row here, I've had your hand up for a while.
First, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. And I know there's a lot of conversation about housing and traffic and all these sort of things, which could be conversations we can have for any development going in any location. But how many people are here because of the animals, huh? And then when you are asked what considerations you've put into this about the animals, and you go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. What?
That's not how I sound.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Dr. Mugetto, the primary concern, and you haven't even put any thought into this proposal, is disgusting. It's the best word I can come up with.
Well, I'm sorry that we've disappointed you, but I do think...
I'm more than disappointed because do you have any idea what this blasting will do to the animals?
Blasting?
Because Okay, to blast that rock.
No, there's no blasting proposed. I don't think we anticipate any
The
blasting.
plumbing and the foundation and all that.
Stone Mountain.
What is that?
You blast.
The roots of Stone Mountain.
No
How do
blasting.
you- Hey, I thought you said that when I was talking, that you were quiet.
Well, I was getting hollered at.
As I was saying, there will be blasting, you gotta put the foundation, you gotta, yes, sir, there
ma'am.
will. They had to do blasting.
Ma'am, all right, so-
Wait a minute,
so
let me
let's-
finish, let me
To
finish.
just, this
Hello.
site has
I'm
been
speaking.
previously graded and
Michael,
developed,
I
and
live
it's
here.
filled with fill dirt, about 30
Stop.
to 40 feet of
Stop.
fill dirt on this site, and
Okay,
there's not
when they had to
solid
put the
rock.
sewer system in
There's
right
not
next to
gonna be
Yellow
blasting.
River, they had to do all kind of blasting because the road is there, and you have to blast into the road. So don't tell me there'll be no blasting.
On the
And
site,
you
there
haven't
won't
even
be.
considered, stop, my nickel. You haven't even considered the impact that this will have on these animals. What are you thinking? Did you not think we would show up and be angry about this?
No, I think you're doing exactly, it's with multiple voices going on. Sir, please, with multiple voices going on. We already I'm trying to get to everybody. I'm trying to get to everybody. So, first one. So,
Yeah.
what I think we can try to do is understand how these animals are going to be impacted.
But why haven't you even given any thought before you came here?
Who
What
said we
is-
didn't give it any thought?
You did, and it's obvious from
No,
your
I-
answers. We'll have to talk to the owner to find out what we can do. And it's only 300 feet, it won't bother the animals. These animals have hard lives before they came to the sanctuary. They came to the do you know what sanctuary means? It's a safe place to live. And these animals, most of them did not come from safe places. And they've come here to live out their lives in peace. And you want to come here and put this crap here. We don't want to put your houses and your development somewhere else, not here. And there's nothing, not one word you can say to change my mind.
Hi, my three questions, which largely go to Lilburn as a community as a whole, focusing on the animals, but also a lot of young professionals, people trying to build their families here. And I think my concerns go to the commissioners' representatives as well. First, the concern is, I think people would agree that Yellow River brings a lot more to this community than another complex of hundreds of rental properties that are going to drain people's paychecks. They can't save to buy a home when they're paying $1,700 to $2,500 out of that $65,000 to $75,000 median income. So I think my questions are, what was the offer and acceptance process for this property? What alternative properties were considered? And why were those not chosen? And is the contract available as part of your application materials?
No, and neither is the contract, or those sorts of private contract terms are just not the type of information that we would share as part of the process. You know, Middleburg is active, you know, in Georgia and across the southeast, so they look at lots of sites, right? I think what they do is look out in an area where they see a market that they're interested in, where whatever features, demographics, income levels, whatever attracts them to a certain area, and they say, okay, we think we can make a community work here. They look to see what's for sale. I mean, that's really how that happens in the development world. Is just
You haven't had real good luck in
listed for
Savannah.
sale, and developers will identify those, put them on the contract, and if the property needs to be zoned, they'll go through the zoning process. And so that's you know, really in a nutshell. It's just that this property was for sale. It fit Middleburg selection criteria for sites. The county's land use policy supported it, so they submitted an application. It's as simple as that.
So, I guess that goes to the underlying concern of why was Yellow River's interest in purchasing the property not also taken under consideration?
So candidly, I don't know anything about Yellow River's attempts to purchase the property. I'm not privy to those offers, if or when or how much they were made. I'm just not privy to that information.
Okay. Is there a way to get a copy of the contract?
Yes.
No, a private purchase and sale agreement for this property is not like a public document, so it
Not
would
true.
have to be the property owner or the buyer to share it. That's
Not
typically
true.
not what's done. So, okay. So
Georgia law.
Comes
on your cheaper.
He thinks there's a way to get it. I don't know that there is outside of one of the parties to the contract sharing it. And actually, most of these development contracts have like non-disclosure provisions where certain contract terms are not to be made, public.
Why? The only question I have is, are you recording this meeting?
I'm not. I think the news
Then
is
I'm
here.
wondering how in the world you're gonna answer all these concerns. How can you keep all that in your mind and know what we've asked and what
We've
all
been
we've asked?
taking notes. My
Oh,
colleague.
thank you. Okay, I was wondering.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Brown sweatshirt. Yep. And I'll just say, well, I've got quarter to 8. I think we've gone over time a little bit, so we'll keep trying to. Gray shirt in the back. You've been up for a while. Yep. So we'll try to answer as many as we can, but we're running out of time.
You've mentioned a little bit about some of the variances. It was brought up the no garages and the no masonry around the front. There's a third one about everything being on a tax parcel. And in the letter of intent, you said, quote, "The requests are necessary because of particular physical surroundings, as well as the size, shape, and topographical condition of the property, result in an unnecessary hardship for the owner, lessee, and/or occupants, as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the provisions of the UDA are literally enforced." So my question is, if you could elaborate a little bit on what is it that makes those variances necessary? It's good to see you. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, so those are the county's variance criteria that they have set forth in the UDO. And so we think that though granting those variances enhances value to the property, we think it facilitates the development. Not all of the townhome units will have no garage. There are some of the units that have a one-car garage. There were certain areas of the plan where we had 2 code sections that we were working through. One was driveway size and one was the car garage. And so what became the most practical solution was to have, for a limited number of the quote townhome style units, to have a variance that those would be surface parks. So like you would, instead of driving into a garage, you would park out in front, like some of the detached units. You park in a parking space and then walk to the front door. So that's what that variance is about. And those are, we think that they facilitate the development and enhance the value. So. Right, yeah, that's the variance criteria. There's some physical challenges on the property, I think, with the large amount of floodplain in the back and the property's condition being already graded. There's a limited, area on which to develop the community, right? Because some of those areas just can't be disturbed. So hopefully that's satisfactory. Gentleman in the gray shirt.
Yes, 2 short questions. I'm assuming there's going to be another public meeting, correct?
So there will certainly be those 2 public hearings before the
Those are
planning
in
commission.
May, but there will be another public hearing.
We're happy to do another one. I mean, if it would be productive, right? I don't want to force people to come out if there's no way that the development can be supportive. I think, those meetings, as much as I like getting yelled at, I think if there's real discussion, what can we change? What can we shift? We're certainly open to it, is the short answer.
So you've got some action items. A big one is about the traffic. You knew the question was going to come up. You know the traffic is going to be ingress and egress office. There's only one way. You can't get through this church. You can't get through the industrial site. So please, on the next one, please bring what you see as studies that the commission would validate. And the second one is, when that area was graded, it was graded for light industrial. I am not sure with the buildings that you're planning to place on it, that you'll need to come prepared with the studies, at least to the planning commission, that will support all the housing that you plan, because a lot of that was plans for asphalt. That's what it was graded for.
Yeah, and so I think if the site was prepped for industrial uses, that's going to be more intense on the site. So you're going to have the tractor trailers, you're going to have the large concrete foundation, slab foundations for the warehouse, and so the code requirements for the slab and the compaction rates of the soil for those types of uses is different than the residential, which is lighter use than an industrial site. So
If you can just be prepared, I'm sure the planning commissioners would want to know that you've done that analysis. I don't know, I suspect.
Yeah. Okay, fair point. Okay, right here.
I'm just surprised that you're so slim and yellow. Of course you guys knew where this was going. Of course you knew that these people. Like you said, you know what, it doesn't typically impact surrounding properties, which makes perfect sense. The next property over is a gas station. This isn't a gas station. These are animals. Look, but they're just animals. It kills me that Sean didn't come up with it. You know what? I want the whole property. I was over there today, and I asked, I said, I'm very visual. I'm not an engineer, I'm just some kid, right? Now, where does this property begin? Do you know where the water tower is?
The cell tower.
No, the water tower.
The water tower. Okay. They're talking about the cell tower.
It's right at the beginning. Look at the building as you walk in. The water tower is right here. I was told that right at the top of that hill, because I know you guys know what hill I'm talking about. No, you don't. It's all going to be raised down there. You're freaking kidding me. She'll go right there. I could underhand the rock, and then you guys will lost 350 feet away. I'm not real good with feet and yardage and all that. Second thing, I just real quick. Second thing is, if somebody's 350 feet away, she was exactly right about, you guys were right about blasting. Okay, so well, what about the decibel? Just for the animal. I'm just thinking about the animals. All the animals, you guys never talked to her? Did you guys realize when this whole process started? Did you kind of go, well, there's this sanctuary. It just kills me how little thought you put into the freaking sanctuary. Traffic, yeah, that sucks. But guess what? As you said, rightfully so, traffic sucks everywhere. So it's going to suck a little bit more. These guys it's a sanctuary. Hey, if you had a child, I think you're married. If you had a child, a newborn, and you're like, hey, honey, they're just going to be making a whole shit ton of noise about 300 feet away. Really far away. What are you talking about? These are animals, they have no voice. You know, it just kills me. If you want that property, which I'm very disappointed you did, other than the outside. I mean, come to my house, go on the road, and tell me what I have in my house. It makes zero sense. UGA guy. The deer, well, see you guys go out. If you go in, you have the deer, then you have the bear. I don't go out. Just visually, just because I'm stupid, I need visual. I don't go, how far is that? And you guys come here. I was actually hoping you had, great, we have a slideshow. This is where this is now. Understanding that it is a sanctuary for innocent animals. Rescue man. Race equipment is great. We got screwed over Stone Mountain. I don't think you should get screwed again here.
Let the owner talk. Let the owner talk. Let the owner talk.
Hi guys. And first off, thanks for everybody showing up. It means a lot to me. First, I got a question. Do you think that if I was to put in a sanctuary in the middle of a residential area, they'd actually pass that zoning? If the roles were reversed, I don't believe they allow us to put a place like ours in the middle of a residential. So, likewise, I think the same should apply. But my other question really is, how many buildable acres, net buildable acres do you guys have?
So the first question, I don't know what the county would approve. I mean, I would assume, you know, if you were going in to do a new one, right? If Yellow River didn't exist now, and you had to go through some sort of zoning process, I think the county would look at that as, you know, they'd probably compare it to the current zoning. They'd look at what the comp plan says. And I think that type of use would make sense in a residential area. I mean, I think, you know, ideally, I mean, would it be better to be in Walton County? Would it be better to be in Wilkes County or somewhere that's just extremely rural and agricultural? And so I'm not,
was rural.
So the thing is, no, it was. And I'm not I'm not looking at you saying, why are you keeping these animals here off of Highway 78 in what you've described as a heavy commercial industrial area? If these animals are so sensitive that a subdivision is going to just totally ruin it, the question could be reversed, but that's not what we're doing.
I did try to buy the property, I never got a price.
Well,
5 years.
Sounds like you didn't make an offer.
I asked for a price.
I don't know that that's the way
I have
deals
5
typically
years of
work.
emails go. Anyway, it
That's
doesn't
kind
matter.
of how
But I
buying
have tried. Every time I talk to Mitch, I said, please, will you give me a price on this property? This is going back to 2018. So I've been trying for a long, long time. But back to the other question, how many buildable acres?
So it's 29 total, and so working back from the floodplain, we're probably 25 acres.
It's about
That's
13.
outside of the floodplain.
About 13.
How'd you get to that figure?
We did Google Maps on it and we checked it out.
So
maybe
Google
I
Maps,
have
which is
15.
not really to scale, and I just don't know that that's
Okay.
Google
So
Maps.
you're
is
saying you have
enough
25
information.
acres?
Yeah, 25.
Is that it's not
That's
including
outside of the floodplain.
Really? Okay. Can I quote you on that?
That's our estimate. We can get you the exact figure.
I read your stuff and it's 20 acres.
So 20 to 25, call it, out of a 29.
Okay, so what's that density?
So I think, yeah, so the way the county calculates density, they don't have a net acreage calculation. That's just not the way their ordinance is set up. Plenty of zoning ordinances do, where they take, no sir, they don't. So plenty of zoning ordinances will say, let's take the four corners of the property, just the total area, and that's X acres. That'll give you gross density, right? Some zoning classifications in some jurisdictions will say, well, let's get a little more detailed, let's take out the acreage that is not buildable, floodplain, swamp, wetland, whatever. And that's a subjective criteria, right? Because it's not this universally accepted, net acreage term. And there's, if somebody were to pull the right permits to have land disturbance in the floodplain, theoretically that's possible. If you pull the right permits from the Army Corps, you go through the right state and federal processes, theoretically that's possible. So it's difficult to come up with these subjective net acreage calculations. And so Gwinnett just says, gross acres, number of units, do the division, that's your density.
Is that for residential?
So that's how RIF works. That's how most of the single-family detached zoning classifications work. Some of the multifamily zoning classifications don't even use a density. They use a floor area ratio, which is like building space. But RIF doesn't even have a maximum density.
But it's for gentle infill, and that was the purpose of the UDO, right?
Yeah, gentle density, I think, is one of the terms that they use.
Really, you're building on 20 acres, so you're looking at 16 units per acre, 15 units per acre.
Okay.
Residential infill is supposed to be 8 to 10, so you're already almost double what the acreage should have at this point right now, correct?
So when you say residential infill, what do you mean? You're talking about the zoning
The zoning is
classification?
going for it, and according to the UGO, they were trying to prioritize gentle infill, correct?
I think that's one of the policies that's discussed in the comp plan and in the.
But gentle infill is a lot less than 16 units per acre, correct?
So I think it ranges, right? Because you have to look at those comp plan policies, which classify the properties in that low mix, right? So if you look at just pick the criteria, right? If you're looking at low mix, that accommodates multifamily. That's apartments. So that's 20 plus units an acre, which the low-rise apartments are recommended as an appropriate land use in that low mix future land use area. And so if somebody were to come and do none of the detached units, none of the 2-unit attached cottages, duplexes, right, and just did apartments, you'd get way higher density, and that would check out. That would be in accordance with the county's future land use plan.
Well, I mean, I don't really see that this fits with the future plan and the spirit of the 2045 UDO. I mean, obviously you do, but from everything I understand, I mean, this is nowhere close. So I guess that's something we'll have to discuss in the future. But really, right now, I think that you should keep your density with less than 8 units per acre on your net buildable property.
Yeah, I think, you know, the gross versus net acreage, there's certainly a debate there. Gwinnett County, it used to have net acreage. They used to do it that way, but they changed it. And I think just looking at the gross, you know, units per acre, they felt like was a better metric, just because it's subjective also, right? I mean, one of the classic example of that is, you know, if you were to do R100, which is 100-foot wide lots, single family detached, yeah, the floodplain's not buildable, but the floodplain can be in the yard, right? So if the unit is allowed to use that area for its own density purposes, then it is being counted. So I think that's why the county. But the physical characteristics would limit you on the development side, right? So that's, and so I think, yeah, to summarize, because we just hit 8 o'clock, and I won't be selfish and try to keep everybody here later than you'd like to be. But that neighborhood low mix, it specifically lists RIF as a recommended zoning district, and it specifically lists multifamily, low-rise, townhomes, stacked flats, quads, triplexes, duplexes, and single-family cottages as appropriate land uses. And so that's what we're looking at is the county's comprehensive plan, not our ideas, but the county's comp plan that we think supports the proposed development. So we are hitting 8 o'clock. The church has been very gracious. I really appreciate y'all taking the time. I'll walk out slowly. I don't think I got to call on everybody, but I'll sort of walk out slowly, and the church may kick us out of the parking lot, but we're happy to continue the discussion as we go. But unfortunately, I think we've got to end it for tonight. Thank you for coming.